Welcome to Berdon eCast. I'm MAURY GOLBERT, tax partner here at Berdon LLP. And with me today is my colleague Dan Shapiro, fellow tax partner. Welcome to the program, Dan.
Thanks, MAURY. Happy to be here.
The subject for today's broadcast is workouts from the borrower's perspective. Dan, so we're in a pretty unique economic environment right now, and what we hear constantly in the news and in the press is that this is going through a workout, that's going through a workout. Maybe you could spend a minute or so just describing for people what exactly that means in the context of the current environment.
Sure. A workout is really when a real estate debt is either in default or soon to be in default. It's a renegotiation of that debt as an alternative to the legal process. For any number of reasons, a real estate lender may not want to foreclose on the property. They don't want to own the property. They don't want to operate the property. They may not want to write down their debt as a result of the foreclosure. So they may be interested in having a conversation with the borrower, who also does not want to be relieved of the property for a number of reasons. Their reputational risk as a result. It's often part of a larger portfolio that the borrower gets economies of scale from. So both parties are often interested in sitting down and renegotiating the terms of the debt in a manner that's mutually acceptable, and that results in the borrower keeping title to the property, at least for a period of time, and the lender still holding the debt.
Now, would you say there's a particular profile of properties, transactions that tend to wind up in a workout scenario?
Well, we just came out of a real estate bubble, as people like to call it, and that bubble was fueled by a lot of loose credit that was available and a lot of liquidity, which gave rise to a lot of would-be property purchasers with a limited amount of inventory, and that caused prices to be bid up to really extreme levels. And at the same time, those purchasers were also borrowing money, probably more than they should have and more than the market should have allowed. It created sort of a condition for a perfect storm, because then when the property performance didn't pan out as expected, when leases roll over and the rents that were negotiated weren't what were projected when they bought the property and borrowed the money, they found that the debt service on that debt was hard to meet, and defaults resulted. I mean, also you had existing property owners that watched their properties' values rise considerably. They went out and borrowed more money, against the property, and they ran into the same situation. Also, there is a fair number of properties out there, even today, that they may be servicing the debt currently, the interest and the principal, right? But the conditions under which they borrowed that money were such that today, with the revised underwriting standards and different metrics and more conservative underwriting principles, when that loan comes due in a couple of years, they're not going to be able to borrow enough to refinance it.
So looking at ahead, even though they're covering today, it's pretty clear that the lender and the borrower both realize a year or two down the line there's a day of reckoning coming, and maybe it makes sense to start talking about it now and figuring out what's going to happen, because they're just not going to be able to replace some of that debt.
I mean, you've heard the term creep into the financial media, extend and pretend, right?
Sure.
Where it's not exactly the lender putting his or her head in the sand, but they realize that under today's environment, that a foreclosure or a sale is not going to yield anywhere near the amount that's owed, and there's a strong feeling that after a few years things will improve and property's values will recover to some extent, and they'll end up better off by simply extending the loan and giving the borrower some breathing room.